who?
This is Billy Corgan. I shapeshifted into me. I'm the devil.
And what's the devil?
No, I'm not. I'm not.
What's the devil?
I'm not. I'm just trying to be funny.
Who is
It's
the
John
devil?
Birmingham.
Who's the devil?
Billy Corgan's the devil. He's just repossessed me. Wiping shit on myself. Billy Corgan. Shit. The devil. Wait, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make a joke of Billy Corgan because he kind of, in a secondary way, like that's not as overt.
Who is Billy Corgan?
Billy Corgan's a singer in the Smashing Pumpkins, but he acts like he's into Satan a little bit, and that's what pays the bills. Okay.
Would you sell your soul to the devil for success and fortune?
No, I don't like
getting your family back?
I don't like never. No, that's wrong.
That's wrong. Why is that wrong?
It'd have to be the good way.
What's the good way?
Well, I personally believe in God.
Who's God? What is God?
A good, loving life force or energy. Energy, it's not to hurt anyone in a negative way.
Is God the God of the Bible?
It can be from the Bible, but not necessarily.
So back in the Old Testament, when God is always killing everyone and smiting everyone and turning everyone into pillars of salt.
Yeah.
Is that God?
Misinterpreted.
Is that the God?
Some of the Bible was misinterpreted.
How is it misinterpreted?
Translated so many times over centuries, went into the wrong hands. Holy wars in the name of Christianity killed hundreds of thousands of people. Maybe
millions. Well, look at all the indigenous people in America.
But Christianity, the real Christianity, teaches kindness to others. Love thy neighbor, and
how come it never happens?
Way.
I mean,
not a selfish, horrible.
Why do we have all these wars? In the name of Christianity, even today. The Germans. God was on our side. The Vietnamese, God was on our side.
That's an inherent.
Iraq and Afghanistan, God was on our side.
War is an inherent, inescapable part of the evil nature of humankind.
Why?
Which, in other words, is known as
it's all
sin.
It's all about money.
It's inherent sin. We can't escape it. Everyone sins a little bit just being alive here on earth, instead of being in heaven where everything is good and no one has to sin.
But isn't heaven right here, right now, when we choose it to be?
Yeah, because there's good on earth too. We're mostly good. I believe we're mostly good.
Then why do we kill all these people? Why do we kill all the Indians? Why do we kill all the... Why did we have slavery in America? Why did we...
Humans don't kill anyone.
Yeah, but we go along with it. The American public.
People get huge enough groups, it's hard to ensure every last person is okay out of like 300 million people in America. Because there's certain resources that people end up dying anyway from different things, and so as trends are going up and down, you can't. Like, especially when it's like with these huge amounts of money, trillions of dollars, how do you ensure that every last person is okay and balanced just enough so that little things don't happen to make them die?
Yeah, well, we spend the most money on the defense, and it's not about defense. It's about making weapons that we sell to foreign countries like Saudi Arabia and Israel that cost the taxpayer billions of dollars, and then the developers or the military-industrial complex makes.
Are you talking to the camera now?
Yeah.
Is it a video?
Yeah, it's a live chat.
Oh, okay. Are you taking a picture of me?
Yeah.
Is it a phone? A video? What
is it? Yeah. It's a good one. You're looking buff, buddy. You kind of look like Arnold.
No, I'm not looking buff.
You look like Arnold. You look like Arnold. You look like Arnold.
I've been eating food all day, but I did go on the treadmill twice.
You ate good food.
Yeah.
How was that dinner I just made you?
I'm still kind of doing, I'm doing okay. From yesterday,
you look great.
Weights all day.
You look great, buddy.
I lifted weights all day.
Yeah, look at that. Look at us. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, but I'm just covered up with this. I'm not trying to show off my body.
Okay.
I've been eating food all day.
No, you haven't.
Well, on and off. Yesterday I didn't eat much food. I just worked out the whole day
Uh-huh.
and had some healthy foods. Today I had healthy foods. I haven't had any bad for you foods other than I kind of messed up and had like 2 or 3 of these cups of yogurt.
Well, that's not bad. Yogurt's not bad.
I had a big thing of oatmeal, plain oatmeal.
That's good.
I had this amazing chicken and stuff that you made with no
Yep.
carbs other than
Yep.
just regular sweet potato. I had
Yep.
some
Those
some
sweet
carbs.
potatoes not going to kill you, buddy.
Yeah, but it was sweet potatoes like my day.
So here we go.
Recovering
Beans,
from
the
working out.
beans, right? And over here we had cabbage, onions, and sweet potatoes. That's it, pretty much. A little cayenne, right?
Beans and cornbread.
No, we didn't.
Beans and
We
cornbread.
we didn't have the cornbread.
It's definitely beans and cornbread. Bop, bop. Make it go bop, bop. Told the boss, stop. Please don't go beans and cornbread tonight. We had too much of that. I'm still feeling all right.
All right. All right. It's all right.
Right.
It's all right.
Beans and cornbread.
Beans and cornbread.
Bop on the party, that's bebop right. Yeah, bopping on the party tonight, does yeah. Great, feels so good on the party, that's true, yeah. Making that food, yeah. For Billy Corgan tonight, cause he's a Satan worshiping weasel in it.
Yep, everything else is upstairs.
No, he's all right.
He's all right.
Music and it's sad and I love him so much, but he got too much into the Satan stuff. He's all right. He's Billy Corgan in school, or whatever his name is. He made the ladies drool when he was young. Now he's old.
And this is the corn stew I made.
Bald, maybe he'll be buff.
Maybe
I'm not sure.
bald buff. Buff and bald.
He quit so he could fit in with his old relatives and
Buff and bald.
instead of being a dude.
Buff and bald. Bald and buff.
Maybe he's nice. Maybe he's an all right guy. Maybe he's all right.
He could be.
Jesus is I. And Jesus is I. And maybe that's what he really believes sometimes. It makes
Who knows?
him cry. And we'll never know unless we meet that nice guy. Billy Corgan, singing about cornbread, stuff like that. And I hope he's not gonna be dead tomorrow. Obviously not. He's a really healthy guy. Unless Jesus comes and strikes him down and makes him realize that he went to the other side and he came back in his body and it feels okay. And he said, I'm going to sell my Maserati. And he gets really nice and he sells all that stuff.
Good night, John. I'm going to go do my live chat now.
Whatever it is, it's not right.
I'll see you in the morning, buddy. I'll see you in the morning.
There goes Billy Corgan. I hope he doesn't smell.
Yeah. See you in the morning.
He smells. Yeah, because he wiped the faces on himself. He smells.
Yep. There we go. So, what's up, gang? Let's see, live chat. All messages are visible. Oh, there you go. Oh, but I'm doing. Hunka. Do. Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins. Yep, that's it. This is your son. No, he's not my son. He's my friend. And I never give up on a friend. Just like I never give up on my cadre, my adepts. Yeah, he could do whatever he wants to do, and why I put John up there is that John is amazing, right? He's got it all going on, but the problem is he gets in his own way. And that is what humanity is biggest problem. We have all the resources, we got all the abilities, we got all of the potential, right? We have this amazing consciousness of a free will. And we are love's co-creation's most cherished child, because we're supposed to step up. Yep. Cadre is very similar to Cadre, which is friend in Irish. Yep. And Gaelic, right? 89? Gaelic. Like son. Yep. So, I was in the United States, a lot of things are going on. And back in, I don't know how many years ago, before in 2015, I was the community active coordinator for a number of churches, right? And I was trying to get churches to work together. Never happened. And the churches that had me, they never paid me. I wrote them grants, I got them money, I got them prestige, but they never stepped up to everything that I got rolling. A restaurant in one of the churches called the No Fear Cafe. Because it was right in the middle of town, right next to the courthouse, right next to the police station, just down the road from where the mission was, just up the road from the YMCA, and the road that we were on. Every kind, lawyers, judges, police chiefs, police officers, sheriffs, people who worked for the hospital, doctors, nurses, and homeless people walked right by our church, and I kind of escorted them in. And I found these two Jamaican grandmas that made the most amazing Jamaican food. And for the first month and a half, I was, it was like my little idea. The guy who was the minister of the church, he went along with it because everything I did was like, turned out amazingly, got great credit, and he took all the credit, right? And got him people to work for him so he could get buildings that he could fix up and then sell. And he used, basically, he had this entity, that nonprofit, that kids came from different colleges, and they all had to have public service credits, and he gave them the little stamp of approval, and he would have them do demo out the buildings, clean this up, move the asbestos out, all the above. And and then he would get other people, other volunteers to fix them up, and then he'd sell them for market value. So one of the things I did was this thing called Action Tuesday. Every Tuesday, because this place that I had the No Fear Cafe in was an amazing restaurant, but it was in the basement of a church. Great kitchen, gigantic Garland stove. And anybody wanted to do anything of action, then they could come in and have their meeting. And these women came from Ukraine, and basically told the story about how Ukraine was a country of many different factions. That goes way back, before the Russians were there, before the Nazis were there. There was always the, nationalists, the folks who wear the lederhosen. Then there were always, when the Nazis came in, there were many people in the Ukraine who greeted them with flowers, right? And there were people, when the Russians came in, there were many people who greeted the Russians with flowers. And when in '96, when the Iron Curtain fell down, there were a lot of people who joined, the EU. They wanted the money, right? They went for the money. So there were four factions, the nationalists, the people who wore the lederhosen, the people who were still Nazis and still marched with that, and there were still people who were commies, and there were still people who wanted their Audi and their black leather jacket. And the place that most represented this was in the Ukraine, was a a city right on the Black Sea called what was it called? It'll pop into my mind. But all the years, for about 600 years, as people just kind of marched in and marched out, this was a place of great culture, great food, great fun, right on the beach. Nobody, Odessa. No, is it Odessa? Yes. So whoever conquered them never messed with that city because they all wanted to go there and have a nice meal and sit on the beach. So these girls come from there because back in the day there was only one TV station, and then when the Iron Curtain fell down, there was two or three, just that. But about a year and a half before the things went into total chaos that they're now, six TV stations kind of, they got cable, they got satellite, and they got these all the time news stations like CNN and like MSNBC and like Fox and two others. And they were all versions of those, but Ukrainian. And they split up the country into these factions. And that's what caused the war that's going on there now. And so these women came back to the United States, or came to the United States, and traveled across the nation to speak to people, saying, "Hey, watch out for Donald Trump. He's going to win." And this is before he even won the Republican thing, and everyone thought he was just a joke. And they said, "No, he is a plant." And they tried to describe the thing that I constantly talk about: the hidden hand and the powers that shouldn't be, and the sock puppet, right? And so they're saying, America, this is like Germany 1933, when the Weimar Republic was the strongest, greatest democracy in Europe, which gave the birth to National Socialist Party through chaos. And that's where we are right now. And the only way that we can deal with this is to stand up, right? To be truthful, right? And that's what I came on to YouTube with Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, was to speak of this. And this is a disclaimer, this channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, is only entertainment, right? It's all about the individual's perspective, right? Not mine. We're not here to teach. We're not here to demagogue. We're not here to create anything but love's co-creation, right? John Birmingham's channel is all about John Birmingham. That's why it's called John Birmingham, right? Everything that John does is about John Birmingham, to serve John Birmingham, right? And that's why John is a great point of view. That's why he is the canary in the coal mine. He really, really, really is the perspective of that, right? And now John, on his inside, if he could ever tap the inside of what John is an amazing guy, right? He's really sweet. He's really wants to do the right thing, but never does, because he's always apologizing. He never can be who he truly is. So he's always miserable. He's always in this place where he's stuck. And that's where the American public basically is stuck. That's where the basic, materialistic, modern world is. And our world is not modern. Our technology is caveman. How did they make the pyramids? That was interesting technology. Go to the Gilded Age. That was interesting technology. Go look at Nikola Tesla. That was interesting technology. Go to the Fordor Society. John Fordor, John Fordor Society, right? That was interesting. Go look at what happened. Go Google mud flood slash Mandela effect, right? We are totally controlled. We are totally mind screwed, right? And we don't have to be if we wake up, if we come to the consciousness of our free will's adeptness in co-creation with love, like that. We can pop the bubble. But if you want to stay stuck, you want to be in that whatever that world that you're in, hey, not a problem. You'll be there for friggin' ever because reincarnation just keeps bringing us around and around and around and around. You have to serve something more than yourself, and that's what the illusion of materialism is about: serving just yourself. And if you're looking for a higher calling within the construct of the illusion of materialism, you end up being, as people go, oh, I'm a light worker. What does that mean? Who's the first light worker? Lucifer, right? So, and who is Lucifer? He is the king of, the non-existent reality of the illusion of materialism. So that's what tonight's about. It's kind of go. I'm going to give you a list of things you should go look at. As your sensei Al Bob. And what does sensei mean? Simply teacher, right? Teacher of respect, right? Grace, right? That's what sensei is, right? And I'm a griot. I tell stories, and I got a good one for you. I was starting. It was my story of North Carolina, and but I'm going to finish this little introduction first, and so. You need to go look at a website called stopthecrime.net. You need to go see a website called Architects and Engineers for 9/11truth.com. And those two will suffice to start you going down the rabbit hole, right? Also, there is if you were to go Google hidden history, that's another good site. I guess it's hidden history dot whatever. And if you go to my xratted.blogspot.com and read the first 3/4 of one of my novels, it's up there in 6 slices, and you can read any slice you want first. It doesn't matter. You could read them in order, 1 through 6, or you could start with 6, or you could start with 4. They're all basically a shamanic ceremony, right? So if you read it and go, oh, I don't understand this, well, read it again. Oh, I don't understand, read it again. And I would suggest that you read, pick, throw a dart at whichever one you want. Read it quickly. Don't stop. There's a lot of things where, what does he mean by that? Don't even stop. Just go right through it and read it again and do it a little slower. And those things that are, if you can transpose it onto your laptop or something that you can write notes, on the side of, or if you can print it out and scribble all over the paper, I suggest this. Because back in the day when I was a, instructor in universities, I didn't use a textbook, and I had everyone write their own, and I broke them down into cadres, on my syllabus that they would print up. And I was just a substitute teacher, meaning I wasn't even going for 10. I was there to do research. And then someone would say, we need somebody to teach intro this or intro that or intro, we'll pay you $100 a class. Okay, good. I'll do that. I said, and give me a student assistant, and we're fine. And I would do that. And on my syllabus, I would put up there in big letters, intro, whatever, I guarantee you an A. Just show up. Then in the next line, I would say, no tests, no quizzes, no papers, no textbooks, no anything. Just show up. And then the next line, and each line got smaller and smaller. Next line, I would say, if you lose, no, if you are there, you get 3 classes you can miss. 4th class, you fail, no matter the excuse. I'm in a hospital. No, sorry, you already used up your 3. If you're in a hospital in a cast and a heart-lung machine, better roll you into the classroom, or you're out, and you can drop. If it's before drop ed, you just drop, right? And most of the people who would do that would drop, right? And then the other thing, in the smallest print, I would print, if you ask me, is this going to be on the test? You fail immediately because you're a putz. I'm not even going to call you a moron because that would be dissing being a moron. And that's how I, right? And so I'd make everyone, so when I'd say, just show up, I guarantee you A, they'd have to give me an auditorium. I'd have like 300 students there, right? And so I'd make them all stand up and count from 1 to 7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, And the ones who couldn't do that, when they would get to the end of the line and say 8, you're out, And so that one little test of counting from 1 to 7 would, if there are, let's say, 100 people who showed up, 60 of them couldn't do that. You're out of here, right? So I would be left with about 40 students, right? And then all the ones are one group, all the twos are another group. And I say, okay, this is how it works. All the ones, you have to, all of the books I want you to read. Yes, there's no textbook, but you're going to read Freud, you're going to read this, you're going to read that. And you have to go to the library. That all these books I want you to read are on reserve. And not only that, all the books that are on reserve are books that there were 7 copies of, right? So each group, even if you all show up at the library at the same time, you can go look, you can go get that book, right? And what I want each of you to do is make your own textbook. And each group will pass or fail by how you treat each other. If you are a cadre in your group, you get an A. If your textbook is really great, you get an A, with a gold star. Anyway, by the time drop ed happened, I went from having, 300 students showing up at the auditorium to having usually somewhere between 6 and 15 students, right? And so it would either be 1 or 2 groups that would be the study group. And that they would come into class and we would do exactly what I'm doing. I tell a little story and then they would talk. And that's why this is kind of the process I use. Again, this is not something I've invented. It's something that I've experienced from all the great teachers in my life. And that is what a griot and a sensei and a guru and every other name for teacher there is that we get the students, the adepts, to be, it's a relationship, right? And so the thing that we're here to do is save frigging humanity and all our relations, right? And we have this window of opportunity, right? And go back and look at all the other windows. If you go look at the mud flood, you will see that had occurred, time in, time out. There have been lots of those. And every time we have a war, it's only because a number of our brothers and sisters are waking up and realizing, hey, this is wrong. Then a war is precipitated, and then those people are killed off. And the best example of that is World War One. Because those people were diehard looking for love's co-creation. They were wanted, the war to end all wars. They're going to fight this war to end all wars. And all the people who were righteous, who if they had lived, would have changed the world. Basically, all the old men were in the back. All the young folk who had a heart for love's co-creation, they all died. And we've had, Civil War, Indian War, Spanish American War, First World War, Second World War, Korean War, Vietnam War, and then 100 other wars that were squeezed in between that, like the Yemen war that's going on now, like the war in the Congo, like the war that's in Syria, the war that's in still going on in Iraq. Meaning, if we hadn't gone into Afghanistan, the bottom line, I mean, Afghanistan was one of the most modern, non-dogmatic, spiritual, religious countries in the world in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And then the Russians came in and just took everyone out. I mean, back in those days, half the doctors were women. A third of the lawyers were women. 20% of the representatives in all the political structure were women. And they weren't in burqas. And everyone was Muslim, and everyone was respectful of their religion and their culture and their heritage. But they were trying to make their country something better than it had ever been. And, the world of the hidden hand attacked them. And Russia is not, evil, and either is any of the others. But the not the cadres, the hidden hand, which is a cabal. And it's not, it isn't represented by any specific gender or country or nationality. It's transnational. And it's that of a Luciferian spirit, And it's not, the Illuminati or any of those other esoteric or occult entities, the Club of Rome, the CFR, the Trilateral Commission. They are just elements of this cabal, and they're transnational in nature. Well, Jane, I used to throw art parties every Friday, and when I was 14, I was working, well, at 9, I started working for Grandpa Stahl. By the time I was 11, I was such a good electrician they could send me off on my own, and I did the repair work. I didn't do, because in our shop, we were a union shop, Local 3, IBEW, and also a non-union shop. And the non-union part of the crew went off and did fix-it stuff, right? Whereas the Local 3 folks did the new, putting in services and, wiring new stuff, right? And we were one, because Grandpa Stahl created Local 3 in the United States. He had the first master electrician's license in the United States. He worked for Tesla and Moray. He worked for Edison. He worked on the Philadelphia experiment. He wired the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building, which had no wires in it. The Chrysler Building, why it's made out of stainless steel. It had an induction coil at the top and one at the bottom, and all those little gargoyles around it were antennas. And it was a zero-point energy device. And Mr. Morgan went and said, "Oh, Mr. Chrysler, hey, this building's really cool, but you're going to have to take everything out." And Chrysler, "What are you talking about? I want to usher in just like we had," because Chrysler understood about the mud flood. Chrysler understood about the Gilded Age. He wanted to bring it back because the Gilded Age was a time where everything on this planet was a planet of prosperity, not a planet of only the rich have it and everyone else suffers, right? And he wanted to bring that back. And Mr. Morgan said, "Yeah, but Mr. Hearst has these pictures of you having sex with animals and little boys, and unless you take this technology out of that building, ooh, baby, you're going to lose everything." And they did it to everybody. The collapse, the economic collapse of the 1891 destroyed the Gilded Age, So, and all of this stuff is like, it's just under the surface. And, why did I reach out to you and bring you in as the cadre? Why did I, see you as the adepts? Not just to have a good time. No.
I want you to step up. I want you to be more than what your little self with inside your little material ego says you are. You are better than anything that you think you are, right? You have this opportunity to be frigging amazing, right? You have an opportunity to be part of a cadre, a chorus. You can be. There aren't too many folks who are the shock troops of love's co-creation. I mean, just a handful. And I am bringing you to a place where you have the opportunity to step up to the open window to change the planet, the solar system, to snap the fingers, pop the bubble of Luciferian materialism illusion. You got this. Or you can just go along and get along and really just be stuck. Well, 9/11 is pretty much, so, 89. To say there are a lot of people who question events such as 9/11 and still believe in Trump. Why? Because they don't want to step up for themselves. Donald Trump is what I call a sock puppet. I mean, the powers that be. I mean, he's been pruned. I mean, you have to look at his family come from Scotland. He comes from a reptile scene. His father. Now, there was a piece of work, And basically, Donald Trump has been a miserable loser his whole frigging life. His father has bailed him out to the tune of $500 million his whole life. And his mentor was a lawyer named Cohen, who was the most despicable person. He was Senator McCarthy's aide, and he was part of the cabal of who's that bitch who wrote the book The Fountainhead. She was the bitch of American exceptionalism. And what is that but a racist, xenophobic, sexist, scared little boy? Not an Nen, no, Nen is right. Rand, thank you very much. Anne Rand, she was the bitch. And she made the list of, McCarthy went after the communists in the government, but not just that. What people don't, this again, a little bit more of Mandela effect. Up until 1970, there were 6 equal political parties: Democrats, Republicans, Labor Party, Communist, Socialist, and Religious, right? You go look at the movies there was, Reverend Martin Luther King. And every time he'd march, there would be every flavor. There would be rabbis. There would be, white, Bishop Kaufman from New York City. I think it was a Methodist or one of those flavors of Christians. Well, that was the political religious party. And it was made up of and there were Muslims there too, And one reason why Malcolm X was assassinated was that he went to the Hajj, right? And he saw the millions of people who were on, and they were all different colors and different flavors. And not only that, different religions, meaning it wasn't just the Muslims. There were like 20 different types of Muslims. Not only that, there were Buddhists and Christians and Jews who were going to Mecca to pray because that was their holy place too. And when he came back, he said, okay, I realized something here. He went to Martin Luther King and said, hey, you and I, let's get this shit together. Let's reach out to everybody, white, black, Asian, you name it. Doesn't matter what religion we are. Let's deal with love. he had this flush of love when he was on the Hajj, and they had to kill him. And he was killed by his, from the guys from his own crew, not from his temple, but Elijah Muhammad, his teacher, his boys went and took him out because he was talking about love amongst everybody. Oh, we can't have that. Love amongst the Jews, love amongst the Christians, love amongst the other Muslims who we hate, just like the Baptists. I lived in a town that had 20 different Baptist churches, and I tried to get them to work together for all of the. This town that had a small little VA hospital that was falling apart, and I wanted all the churches to work together to support it. Couldn't get them to do it. Wanted to start. I owned a building that had been a restaurant, and there was no restaurant. KFC and Hardee's were the only restaurant in this friggin' little town, and all these churches could cook. These ladies could cook and that's why I was a member of all these churches, because I would go from church to church to church with my Tupperware suitcase and just whatever food was left over I took home, and that's what I ate all week long. And this is what I do. My whole life has been one experience of getting people to come together. And I've been extraordinarily successful in lots of movements, but as time has gone by, people have become more fearful, more selfish, more xenophobic, more everything than the 50s where I grew up, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they got better and better. 90s, Bill Clinton, that guy is straight up, go do some homework on Billy Boy. And, they put Hillary up against, good old Donnie, because Hillary was the only character that Donnie could win from, right? And all the people who were up in the Republican, thing, they know, there were a lot of really good Republicans that could have, just taken Donnie apart, but the system wouldn't let them step up. They just put up morons, non-denominational churches. Yep, Jane, that's kind of what I'm talking about. That was the religious political party. And when you had six equal, the Democrats and Republicans were no more stronger than the Labor Party. The Labor Party was probably the strongest party of all those six. And the socialists and the communists, the communists weren't like from Russia, like, Joe McCarthy was saying. No, they were a homegrown political party that came after the Civil War. And they only started calling themselves communists after, what happened in Russia, And the socialists, had been calling themselves socialists because the people who really, it wasn't Marx and Engels who brought up socialism. It was the Greeks. Yes, people have de-evolved. That's why I loved Devo. Do, 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 do. Ooh, do, do, do. Do, 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 do. All wearing plastic planters on their head. Yep. Arkansas. I had a friend of mine who was, so I was I studied and was part of every group you could imagine, right? And one of them was the Rainbow, and because I was in the, I worked at the Fillmore East. I was part of the rock and roll scene, and I was in the Lower East Side from, 1969 until 1988, right? And when I worked for Grandpa Stoll, what I did mostly was work for landlords. I'd fix their stuff, and I was really good at a lot of different things that, elevators, standpipe pumps, transformers. Anyway, so there was this one real estate guy who I not only fixed his stuff, he would buy buildings in really terrible neighborhoods and fix them up, but they were in Manhattan. So people who were coming to work, who were kind of artists who worked, in advertising or here or there, like there was a neighborhood right under the Manhattan Bridge that was right between Chinatown, Little Israel, and Little Italy. And it was like the no man's land. It was like right near the Bowery. He bought a ton of buildings there, right? And he had me fix them all up. And that's where I got my chops on fixing up lofts. Anyway, so he had a building on Avenue B and 9th Street. It had been a nun's place, right? And he bought it from the nuns and had a beautiful garden. And the building was a gorgeous building. And he just kind of sliced it up so it could be about 15 apartments rather than a gigantic big nunnery. And so he gave me apartment, and it was not in the basement, and it wasn't on the first floor. It was right in that middle place, a little bit below the sidewalk. And I had these. It was a railroad flat, so it went the whole length of the building, but it wasn't that wide, right? It was maybe 18 feet wide and about 70 feet long, right? And this had just been, not even, it had a septic line, a water line, but nothing else. And so the toilet was like on the wall. There was no real shower. The kitchen was a hot plate, and I had one little sink, right? But I had this amazing garden, right? And I was kind of below the sidewalk. So this was, 1969, 70. And all these girls with mini skirts would walk by and their feet were at the level of my window, and I could just look up, right? So it was okay. And so one day, knock, knock, knock on my door. I open it up, and there's this black bearded guy with really black glasses and really black curly hair. And he goes, "Hi, I'm your upstairs neighbor. My name's Alan." And he goes, "I can tell you like to cook. And, because I can smell what you're cooking going up, And I was a real cook. My grandma taught me how to cook. I worked in restaurants. Anyway, so I go, "Oh, yeah." And he goes, "Come upstairs." So we go outside. We go up the steps up to the front door. We go into the hallway where the steps went up. And he had, this big apartment on one side, right above me, right? And then there was one over there. And so he would go in, and what his apartment had been was pretty much the kitchen and the medical kind of thing the nun had, right? And the medical thing was this gigantic bathroom that was white tiled completely, had drains in the floor, and it had a jacuzzi, and it had showers for the girls, and it had this fire hose that shot against the wall, and you kind of turned it on, got the temperature you wanted, and then eased your way into the fire hose, and it was an amazing massage tool. And the kitchen was all stainless steel, had a Garland stove, a hood, a friolator, gigantic refrigerator, and a counter, and commercial dishwasher, and it had a pantry with all the dishes and silverware and a lauder. And anyway, so he goes, "I know you got a staircase in the middle of your apartment that goes up to the ceiling where it's boarded up." And we go over, and he throws this carpet that was over. He says, "See, this downstairs and here used to be connected by your staircase. Why don't we lift these boards up, and we'll be roommates. You can use, and I know you just have, I looked through your window and your toilet is like on the wall. This is an amazing bathroom. This is an amazing kitchen. And what I want is I want access to your backyard garden because I love gardens." So Allen Ginsberg was my roommate for 2 years when I was 14, 15, going on 16. Right? And every Friday, we would have a salon. And the avant-garde of the world came in, and I made food. And everybody was like, Alan was probably 30-something. And everybody, Andy Warhol, you name it, everybody, Herbert Berghoff, Julian Beck, Judith Molina, you name it, was there. And that's how I got into the theater, because all these people were theater people. And I was an electrician. "Oh, we need an electrician." So I started fixing everybody's everything. Reality sandwich, yep. And so from 1969 up until 99, every place I went, I was the minister of cultural fun, right? In New York City, in London, in Ireland, in Brazil, in Asheville, North Carolina, in High Point, North Carolina, in Ithaca, New York, from 69 to 99, 30 years, right? And in all the universities I did research in, again, my basic thing was the minister of fun, right? And I just would take these resources and turn them into the Nike missile of culture. And in 99, that died. It all kind of, everything became digital, everything became money. In 1980, 1976, things started to go from art for art's sake to money for God's sake. And it just got going and going and going until we have reached this pinnacle of soulless materialism, right? And we we are the cadre. We have a real opportunity. A very interesting group has formed around me, and you all adepts. And I am your sensei Al Bob. And what I want you to do, I mean, you're all over the world. It's not like I go into a town, and I mean, I was in St. Louis, I was in the Twin Cities, I was in San Francisco, I was, in all of these places, and I'd stay there a while and spin up a cultural community. Well, now, thanks to the YouTube and the digital platform, which was supposed to kill everyone's soul, is given this opportunity. So, what needs to be done? Every one of you, all 12 and all 240 something of you of the cadre, need to, in your own neighborhood, start a salon, start a restaurant, start the other thing that will lead into Humanities Artist Trust International, the umbrella, will be, I would love it if everyone that's hearing me, all 12 of you, start a Occupy movement. I was at Sarkady Park. Back in the 70s and 80s, I was part of a thing called Ad Busters, right? Which the people of Ad Busters kind of morphed into Occupy movement, which morphed into the anonymous movement, right? And the strategy of not having a leader was really good. And Sarkady Park was amazing. I went there once it got started because my buddies from hey, Al, you got to come to this. Is pretty cool. So I showed up, and I had a godson who was in the hotel business, and he got me a suite like a block away, right next to it was on Varick Street. I forgot. It was kind of right next to one of those. Anyway, it was just 2 blocks from Sarkady Park. So people, I had this place that had an amazing. I said I wanted twin beds, two beds, and so I would have people up there, and I'd have 30, 40 people in that room every night that could sleep on. Sleeping on the floor in that suite was way more comfortable than sleeping on the concrete at Sarkady Park, but they did it. And I'd have 4 or 5 people stuck in a bed and on the couch and on the chairs, and they could, I got myself a room that had jacuzzis and had room service, and my godson was rich enough, and he was part of the corporate whoop-de-doo of that company, so it wasn't costing him any money, and so I spent about a month there. That's something I can't stop thinking about. You said something like, if you are a bully in this life, you come back as a slug. Yes, but the real thing is, if you're a bully in this life, you're already a slug. Because anyone who has any self-worth, has any confidence, has any understanding on who they are, they won't bully anyone, And bullies only bully when they get pushed into the corner, And people who are really good can be bullies because they have no self confidence. And when they have these moments of self loathing, that's when they lash out and throw people under the bus, kick them out of their house, jeopardize their life, make them get out. At 1 in the morning when it's 2 degrees below zero outside and it's snowing and it's the 2 mile long driveway is a sheet of ice. And it's not because they're evil people. It's because there's a slug in their head that's eating away their connection to love's co-creation. So that's what that is. Yes, there's, and all of those slugs, we need to love. I mean, that's how I deal with, the most violent. I used to work, I was like a shrink um, for the New York City Housing Authority. And I had started with a group of people a housing coalition in New York in 1980 when, people like Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan basically destroyed the social safety net, like in about 3 years. And then the person who really destroyed the social safety net in this country and killed the dynamic of community was Hillary Clinton and Billy Boy. When she, every time the powers that shouldn't be speak up and say something like, "Oh, it takes a village." Well, that means they're going to set that village on fire. Yes, of course they were abused. Yep. But the bottom is those coals that we need to roast them on are the coals of love. Because if we try to, out bully them, not going to happen. Meaning, when I was a little peanut of a child, and, most people just like, what? And I would say things and do things that I had, I'm just there as this child of love and honesty. And I would, like my dad, he would have all these big cocktail parties. And I would just say, "Daddy, why is that man lying? Why is he cheating?" I would like blow everyone's cover. And when I was in grammar school, I mean, bullies would try and pick on me, but everything they said and did just went right over my head. I didn't even blink. I just went over and then started, playing with some kind of amplifier or radio or fix this or went over to a friend and said, "How you doing?" I never let the bully because they were just not even in my visual cortex. And every time like the first time a group of bullies, they picked on me, they did it, I totally ignored them and people laughed at them, right? And so every time they tried to be violent to me in school, a situation would, you know, come up where they couldn't. So they got on my bus and they went on the bus. I'm going to get off at my bus stop. And I was like one of the only kids at this bus stop. And our bus went way out into the countryside. We weren't like in the towns, right? We were out there in the countryside. And so, we were already kind of castigated for being not even, well, you don't even go to this town. Why are you in this school? Anyway, so these two thugs got on our bus, and our bus not only had grammar school, but they had middle school and high school. So these kids were, you know, um, middle school already. They tried to bully me when I was in third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. Not really. So then they went on to middle school, and they were in the high school, and they got picked on by the high school kids. And then by the time they were a freshman, is when, I was like in sixth grade, and I still was a little peanut. I didn't really grow until I was a freshman in high school, and up until then I was this little cute little peanut of a kid. Anyway, and I had this dog, Dandy. And when I was a kid, up until 10, I was sick all the time because when I was born, I died. And, this great doctor, Dr. Teresa, saved my life and my mother's life. And she was in my life until I was about 14, until I went off to seminary. And then she got a big fancy job. And, well, she always had a big fancy job. But anyway, She saved my life, and she was my doctor my whole until I was 10. And then I got another doctor. But what happened was she turned me on to a guy who was all about allergies. And he was way out in the country, way out in Suffolk County, Long Island. And he had a farm, and he had every kind of allergen, you know, every kind of animal, every kind of plant, every kind of everything that you could be allergic to. And you would go there and you'd stay there a little while, and he would have you roll around and stuff until, it wasn't just, picking you, hitting you with a needle. Anyway, long story short, his wife was the animal, but she bred horses and dogs. And the dogs she bred were these Labradors, golden Labradors. And I got there, and this one, so he had me to go to the dog kennel, and I hung out with his wife and rolled around with the dogs and in their clippings and everything, and see what I would get allergic to, and that's how we did it. And you stayed there, and so this one mama dog was about to have pups, and I was basically sleeping in the kennel when the baby, the mama dogs had babies, right? And they started coming out, and I was right there before, my doctor's wife, the head animal husbandry person, came, and I was already catching the little puppies, and she told me, oh, the first thing you got to do is hold the puppy and have the mommy lick it off, or that's if the mommy doesn't just come over and do it. Anyway, so I was doing that, and she showed up, and there was this one runt that the mommy dog just didn't want to have anything to do with. And I took it upon myself to make that puppy survive. I fed it, I kept it warm, I slept with it, and that dog became my best friend. Dandy. King Dandy was his name. Kim Jang's Dandy, right? And so, he was, had the big lineage and all the rest. But mom didn't want to take care of him. So I took care of him. And so I was there for a good 3 weeks until every allergy I had was understood. And he would hit me with this jungle juice that he would make, and bango, you were like, ah. And that's why he stayed there. I mean, if you were really serious about getting rid of all the poisons and allergens in your body, you had to stay there for a while. You just couldn't come and once in a while get those shots. No, it's like full on. So my parents were up for it. So by the time I was ready to leave, that little puppy was a strong little puppy, and that's usually what happens to, runts. If they survive, they're usually the strongest one of the crew. Anyway, so when we're ready to leave, and this puppy is now my brother. I'm its mother. I fed it. I kept it in my pocket. I, went to sleep with it in my pajamas. And this dog, it can't live without me. So, the doctor and the mother tells my mother that if you want your son to really be healthy, you need to take this dog home, because this dog will be the key to your son's not getting allergies anymore, right? And they have to have the kind of relation they have right now, where he's sleeping with the boy, he's being with the boy, he's always with the boy. And so my mom said, okay. And my mom ruled, so she told my dad this is what it is. And my mom was a secret lover of dogs. She had one, she was a little girl. She had one before she went off. She had one in New York City when she had this big fancy apartment, Homer. So anyway, so she loved Dandy too. And she saw how Dandy loved me. And that was like my mom. My mom, that was her good side. She could see these kind of things and realized, okay, this is what we're going to do. So, as that was around 10 years old. I was maybe fifth or sixth grade. And that dog was my dog. And that son, by the time I went off to school that year, he was now, instead of 12 pounds, he was now 60 pounds. By the time Christmas came around, he was 120 pounds. By the time, March showed up, he was 160 pounds. When he got on his back paws and stood up, he was like 6'2". And he had a head like a, excavating tool. His head looked like he was a lion. I mean, he was short-haired, but his head was gigantic, and he had a mouth that, he could take your whole thigh into your mouth and rip it off. He was like he was just Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was in good shape. And so, so I would, from where my parents' house was to where the bus picked me up was about a half-mile walk, and that was good for me. Exercise. I worked half a mile, waited for the bus picked me up, and Dandy would walk with me too. We do, right. And in the afternoon, he like had a Timex watch. He would be waiting for me for that bus to show up. Now, by the time this happened, Dandy became the king of my. All the other dogs bowed to him. The only dog that ever kind of tested him was this big poodle, but it lived kind of far away. And whenever they had a fight, Dandy would rip him a new one. Anyway, Dandy never fought because anyone who's that strong never has to fight. He loved everybody, every dog, every cat, every animal. He loved all. He was the entity that represented the love of all our relations, right? So, and he was my sensei, he was my sensei, Dandy. So every time I would come, the bus would drop me off. Dandy would be waiting for me, right? And on my bus, in Forrest Gump, he had Jenny. I had my Jenny, right? And I had two other friends that were part of my cadre. And, Desmond, what was Desmond's last name? I forget. Desmond, who walked on his toes all the time, and people made fun of him. But he was a great guy. And his father was the guy who was in charge of the kennel in this, and they had whippets. And so, and horses. And Desmond was the animal whisperer, and Dandy loved him too. And so Desmond and I and this other kid, Joey, would get off. The three of us were on the bus, right? And Joey came from New York, and he was Italian, and people kind of made fun of him. But they were scared of him too because his dad was kind of in the mob. So anyway, we were totally three different people, but we were okay. We were like, okay, right? And Desmond was my good buddy. Joey, not so much. I mean, he was, but he just, he was a gangster, so anyway, so for some reason, I'm on the bus and I'm sitting with my Jenny, and she is constantly going, "What are those two guys? They're looking at you. You better watch out." Da 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 da. Right? And so I'm like, looking at my little notebook, and I'm drawing, a circuit board, and she goes, you want me to get off the bus with you and protect you? I said, no, please. Anyway, so the bus comes, stop, I get off, and I'm the only one getting off, right? And I get off, and these two. So I just got buffered. Am I still here? Every time I get buffered, I talk for 30, 40, 50 minutes, 2 hours, and then I go back and look, and I don't come back. Yep, okay. So I get off the bus, and I'm not even paying attention to these bullies. Yep. And so I have my little, I don't have a book bag. I just have an armful of books. I get off, I kind of, they slide out of my things, and I bend over to pick up my books. And this guy has this book bag. They must have rocks or something in. And he kind of is twirling it around his head to hit me with it. And then out of nowhere, Dandy was a little late. He didn't wind his watch, and he comes flying down the road, and he sees these two guys gonna, do something nasty to his brother, me, and so he puts on the power, and he is running like a racehorse, and the bus doesn't close the door, and because everyone's looking out the window of the bus, what's going to happen to Al? And my little Jenny sees Dandy coming and goes, "Dandy!" And I hear, "Dandy, Dandy, Dandy!" And it's Jenny's voice. And I'm kind of looking around, and out of nowhere, Dandy takes a leap and he flies through the air, and he's so wide, he puts out his two paws, and he gets both of the bullies in their eye with each of his paws, with these gigantic claws like a lion, like sticks it in their eye, and then down their face. And then I hear this tremendous crash against the bus, and I look up, and the bus is going like this. You know, Dandy must have been doing 70 miles an hour. He weighs 160 pounds. So this little math problem: if you're doing 70 miles an hour and you're going through the air and you weigh 160 pounds and you smash into two, objects that then smash into a bus, how much force is that? Well, Dandy nearly rips the sides of their faces off, right? And they go smashing down to the ground. And the bus driver is not only a bus driver, but he is like a policeman, semi-retired, but still kind of on the force. And what he does is amazing. He jumps out of the bus and comes over to me, picks me. You okay? You okay? Did they hurt you? And they're on the ground crying and moaning, and Dandy's, he's now got a paw on each of their chests, and he's not even barking. He's looking straight at them, and he's going, I'm gonna eat you. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna touch my friend, my brother. I'm gonna kill you. And I mean, way more scary than if he was barking, right? And so the guy gets these two kids and pulls them up, and their faces are a mess, and basically throws them in the bus and drives to the police station and has them arrested for attempted murder because they had rocks in their bags. And they went to jail. And nothing happened to me. And I didn't even have, I wasn't thinking that these guys were going to hurt me because I was always surrounded by love. And that's how you deal with violence and bullies and where we are right now. All the political, the hidden hand, the powers that shouldn't be, the sock puppets, we can't fight them. Can't fight them with violence. And all these different groups that want to, QAnon and all of this stuff, forget about it. Because every group that has that kind of consciousness is being manipulated by Lucifer. The only thing that Lucifer can't touch is love's co-creation. And that's what this group is about. Now, I've spent the last 5 or 6 years trying to get all these different groups to work together. It's not, and basically, I think I've told you, wherever I live, wherever I do, whatever I, am, I do it completely to the point where, okay, did that, done that, don't need to do it anymore, right? And that's where I'm at with that kind of organizing. That kind of, okay, if I'm logical, if I make a really good strategy, if I'm really bringing people together, if I can talk to that individual and get them to understand, well, I can fix this. Well, no, not going to happen. So, phase 2, and that's the cadre of love's co-creation. And that's why you all have shown up. You're all amazingly diverse. You're from all over the friggin' planet. None of you are coming from the same socioeconomic or psychological or experiential point of view, but you're all cadre. And when you join the chat, you are all chorus. And when you go into state, you are all shock troops of love's co-creation. And now we've been doing this since, mid-October, and you're all family. Right? So say we all, right? And we feel that in our heart. Every time I say that, why I choke up is because I can feel it in all of you, right? And you so much want this. You so much need this. And you so much are this that you're changing in ways that you've never changed before. You were changing in thought, word, and deed, you know? Good thoughts, good words, good actions, good deeds, good outcomes. And you're seeing this in your life in the last 6 weeks or so. This has like been, whoa, what the heck is going on here? And you've already just amalgam this into your life's path. You're getting there. Yep. The inner links. Fine and dandy, yes. Dandy was fine. And he lived with me for 30 years. And he was in perfect health to, and labs have, their hips, because they've been so interbred. And what happened to Dandy was he was so amazing. When my parents moved into back into New York City and lived at the Manhattan House, which is a super duper, they got doormen and a concierge, and it was an automatic elevator, but they had elevator operators because people were too rich to push the button. And everything was done for everyone. And one of the rules said you can't have a dog. But everyone in that building let Dandy be there, meaning all the people who worked there, the management who worked there, and all the people who had apartments, all these rich people. Well, if I can't have a dog, then they can't have a dog. Well, Dandy was everyone's dog. He loved them all, right? And so everyone agreed, without agreeing, that Dandy was it. He was Dandy. He was Jim Dandy, King Jim Dandy. And he made everyone happy. Whenever he came into the room, everyone just lit up, right? And yes, when I wasn't there, when I lived in Europe, when I was doing this, he lived with my parents, and he loved my mom, and he was okay with my dad. My dad took him for a walk. My mom didn't. But my mom, he loved my mom, right? Because he knew that she was my mom. So, he's my dad. He's okay. I won't, I'll do what he says. But man, whenever I was there, he would come straight and stay by my side. Right by my side, in my bedroom, right by my side. When we leave, he'd walk. My dad had to have him on a leash. I would have the leash in my pocket. If someone said something, I'd just clip him up. And if someone said something, he would sit down and put his neck like this, like go ahead, and we'd walk out. And then I'd walk out with a leash attached to him, but not in my hand. And he would stay right at my side. And he met everyone with a smile and happiness. And if there was something wrong with somebody, if someone was not really, could have been a threat, he would stop and he'd look at them and he'd give them this eye, right? And people would look at him doing this like eye. And if they could loosen up, if they could be sweet, if they could not be that evil thing, he would then like, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. And he brought the best out in everyone. And there were so many situations where, I'm living in Manhattan. I went everywhere. I did not say, oh, that's a bad neighborhood. I would go because 69th Street was like, 4 or 5 blocks over there was not so, go away on the east side, not so good. Go away on the west side, not so good. Go to certain parts of Central Park, not so good. I went to everywhere, right? And I would go to the subway. This is before people had their emotional support dogs. I would go on with him, and I would put the leash on him so it looked like he was a seeing eye dog. And I'd have a pair of sunglasses in my pocket, and I'd just put them on. And we would walk through, and I had this little plastic thing that, would hold an ID in. And I wouldn't even go through the turnstiles. They had these open doors that people would exit in. I would like walk through that, and he would be guiding me, and I would hold up this plastic thing like Doctor Who, and we would get on the subway. I did that for almost 20 years, and no one said boo about it. I'd go into restaurants. We'd walk in, he would go under the table, no one would say anything. So he was my sensei. He was my guru, right? And that's what made me a dog boy. Dogs are the spiritual awakening. Dogs, God, exactly, Lisa. Everything. Yep, they're ahead of that number, And cats are too, but they're so reflective. So it's all about me. Where dogs are all about, so say we all. Dogs are all about the crew. Dogs are all about the clan, And they don't want to, no dog wants to be the alpha dog. It's too much work. I had another great dog. Her name was Bella. She was my last. Bella was my mama dog, and she had puppies when she was 10. I thought she was a lesbian most of her life. But then she had puppies. And 6 of those puppies were just like her. Black, 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 with a white diamond in her chest. And a couple of them had the little white patch over one eye. And she was a lab Newfoundlander border collie. Just an amazing dog. She looked like a little bear, smarter than Albert Einstein, way smarter than me, right? And so her basic attitude was, okay, I'm going to tell you everything we need to do. You just take care of it. You can, I don't want to be in charge. You do it. Because when she was 2, she wanted to drive the car. She would sit in the driver's thing and put her paws on the steering wheel. And I said, well, how are you going to hit the, you got thumbs, you're going to go for the, how are you going to change the gears? And she went, no, you do it. I'm going to just drive the car. And she was like Scooby-Doo, but way smarter. So she was a great, so she was with me 24 years. And Dandy was with me 30 years. And when he died, so one morning, I wake up and I look at him and he's not up. Usually he gets up and he's sitting there waiting and his tail is wagging and he's like, let's go out. Let's start the day. Let's go. And he was just there and he looked really sad. And I said, buddy, what's up? And I said, come on, let's get up. And he couldn't get up. Come on, let's go. Couldn't go. So he had a vet who loved him dearly. And so what did I do? My dad had, because these apartments were so fancy, everyone above the 18th floor had their own fireplace. So my dad had a flexible flyer from when I was a kid that he had in the apartment, and that he would go down and into Central Park and get wood on the ground and bring it back and burn it in the fireplace. And so I got the flexible flyer and I picked Andy up and he had gotten a lot lighter. He was no longer 160 pounds. At 30, he was close to more like 70 pounds. So I picked him up, put him in the flexible flyer, rolled him to the elevator. What's wrong with Dandy? I don't think he's feeling too good. We're going to go see the vet. And I called the vet. We went over there and the vet said, oh, Dandy he's had a heart attack and he's had a stroke. I can't imagine him living more than a day or two. He's like on the other side. He's just wanting you to be totally with it for him to go. And so he goes, the best thing is just hit him with a needle. And I said, okay, I think sounds like right. So he goes, I have a room over here that why don't you, we'll put him in a nice bed and you sit in the bed with him and put his head on your lap and you talk to him. If it takes an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, whatever it takes, you guys get jiggy with it and I'll be in with a needle when it's right. I'll come check him out every hour or so just to see how he's doing. So I spent about 3 hours with him, and the vet gave me, a bottle of water to, just like the baby bottle with water, and he gave me doggy treats that he knew Dandy liked, and Dandy definitely drank the water, and the treats he just liked. He couldn't even eat them, but he liked smelling them, having the memory of us playing and me always having a pot full of these treats. And so I just kind of put him in, and he kind of smelled them and put his head in my lap and smiled at me. And we talked, I told him stories about all the things we did and the times that I disappointed him. I apologized. And he nuzzled me saying it's okay. And then, after about 3 hours, the doctor said, "Well, how you guys doing?" And Danny kind of looked at him and said, "Okay, it's time," and kind of nuzzled me and said, "Yeah, it's time." And the guy slipped in the needle, and Danny's little head. I mean, Danny was already gone. I mean, he couldn't move any muscles. He couldn't. And he had already. I think the reason why he didn't want to eat anything, he really hadn't eaten anything the day before, so he had eliminated um, from the last time he ate. I took him out for a walk and he eliminated. And then, the morning showed up and he didn't want to eat anything. So he didn't. He knew that when he died, he didn't want to make a mess. So he didn't eat anything. And so the guy slipped him the needle, and you know, he just kind of slipped away. And when the only thing he could move was he moved his head up and put his eyes on my eyes. And that's how he died after 30 years of him being my best friend. And I saw him being born when I was 10 years old. Right? I was 40 when he slipped away. And so to have a dog from when you were 10 to 40. And, so a lot of those years, I wasn't around, but my parents loved having him, and the, places he was in, they loved having him. And everyone loved Andy. And so, and when you can have a friend like that, that's what a good life is about. So every time I meet a dog, I visualize Dandy. So I can go up to, when I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, um, the homeboys used to go up into the rich people's neighborhoods and steal their dogs and then take them down and throw them in this pit. And then their killer dog would jump down there and they'd have a fight. And they would bet not on who was going to win, because it's pretty obviously the killer pit bull is going to tear Fluffy apart. But they would bet on how long it would take the dog to be torn apart, not just killed, torn apart. Now, the pit bulls were trained, if the dog died, they wouldn't tear him apart, because once they kind of went, if they didn't do it in the throes of fighting, that dog was kind of, they'd have to put the dog down. I mean, if they tore him apart after it was dead, that dog would go after everything. Anyway, so I would go there, and the smart dogs would play dead, and then the pit bull would stop. And that was the side bet, meaning if the dog didn't die but played dead and the pit bull stopped, then that was another bet. So I would go over there, and every Friday they would have these I would go for that, and I knew these guys, and I would basically fix the dogs up and try to find their owners. I take it to and the people who were at the dog pound, they knew me, and they knew that I did this, and the cops would always say, "Who did this?" I don't know. I just found the dog. Anyway, so that was part of my thing, and I would bring a lot of these dogs back. And so one of these guys who had the killer dogs, he had to leave town. And so he sold every killer dog he could, and the ones he couldn't, he kept chained onto these pipes that were that's how they weren't in, they were just, steel pipe in the ground with concrete, with a chain around their neck, choke collar. And one day I went by this place, and there were 4 dead dogs. They choked themselves to death. And there was one dog that was like, his neck was right to the pipe, right? And he was a Rhodesian Ridgeback. I mean, really big dog. And Rhodesian Ridgebacks were bred in Africa to fight lions. These are nasty dogs. Could snap the neck of a pit bull like a twig. But this guy had been on the pipe there without any water or food for a long time. He was like skin and bones, and he couldn't bark or anything. But he wasn't going to die. And I went over to him, and he was like, "Gonna kill you, gonna kill. I hate all humans. I hate all. Gonna kill you." And I said, "Hey, buddy, relax. I'm your friend. I'm going to get you out of this situation. Just, relax, right? So, and the thing about dogs, right? If you have an open hand, that's a threat to them. A hand like this, it's not a threat. So I put that in front of him just so he couldn't, far enough where he couldn't bite it, but he could smell me. So he's smelling, and he kind of goes, well, I got nothing to lose. I'm about to die here. And he was like, he had been in his own feces, and he was a mess. Like I said, skin and bones. So, a big dog, big dog, but all skin and bones. It probably could easily weigh 190, 200 at the, his bigness. And so I, basically untwirled him pipe, and then once I got enough thing to get enough chain to take the choke collar and it dug into his neck all the way around, all the way in. It was, and it had kind of started to, you know, the blood coagulate around the thing. I said, okay, buddy, this is gonna, not be nice for you, but I got to get you off of here, and I got to get you to a place where I can take care of you. Said it's not here. So I kind of, um, unfurled him enough, and then worked the chain out of his neck, like link by link. And I went and got water. Went over and got water, and I soaked his neck big time, and then put water down his mouth. Just in my hand, and just put it. And the fact that I put, cup of water in my mouth and put it down his throat, where he could have ripped he didn't have the energy to rip my hand up, but, he had the teeth and the jaw and the muscles. He could have very easily, but not in the shape he was in. He kind of said, wow, this guy is actually trying to help me. And he's trusting me not to rip his hand off, and he kind of understands that I'm upset, and he's actually. So, I mean, when I did that, when I kind of put the water in his mouth, he really changed. He was like, okay, I think I'm going to trust you. So I worked every one of those little links out of his skin, and, opened, the chain up and took it off his neck, and then picked him up and walked him about 3 blocks to my house. And I had sheets, and I wrapped him up in sheets, and I took the cushions off of a couch, and put him on the cushions, and I moved the cushions into the kitchen because it had a tile floor, and it didn't have a carpet or the other stuff that I had. And so, so I put him there, and then I went back and I buried the other dogs, right? And when I came back in about an hour, he smelled that, the dirt and the other dogs. And he again looked at me like he knew exactly what I did. I'd gone and buried those dogs, and he was like, okay. And he looked up at me, and he tried to smile, and he tried to have his tail wag, and his tail was like a whip, and he just couldn't. It just kind of moved a little, just a little bit. And I just spent the whole evening putting water, and I had gone and got those protein drinks from the doctor's kind of dispensary, and I just fed him the protein milk, and he really liked that. Just glug. And I just left him in my lap the whole night, and I just rubbed his head and his ears and his back and the different acupressure points in his body to get rid of the pain. And within 3 days, he was a mess, but he could move around, and he was like, yeah, I'm your dog, you are the dude, right? From that point on. And within, I would say, less than a month, and I just kept feeding him, taking him on walks, and he was probably one of the best dogs I ever had, as good as Dandy and Bella, and in a way better because both those dogs never had to suffer like he did. and they always had me from birth. And Frank was, he was Frank. I mean, he was like, he always was truthful and honest. And he was Frank. So he wasn't like the smartest dog in the world, not like Dandy or Bella, but he was loyal. I mean, those two guys were loyal too, but loyal like he always put his body between me and what he thought might be a threat. Bella did the same thing. So did Dandy. I mean, they both were that way, but they grew up with me from birth, and we all had this attitude of how to be shamanic. Frank, not so much. He was just Frank, right? So until we had a car crash where he went flying out the window, he was always with me, and in the neighborhood I lived in, which was kind of Chicano gangster, but this is in the '70s, so they weren't as weirdly ruthless. MK Ultra out, and I was, I was the doctor's boy, and he owned the supermarket, and he took care of everyone in our neighborhood, and so yeah, we yes, and the doctor was Hopi and Spanish, and I was just me. So we didn't represent the things they hated, but Frank. So they knew Frank as the killer dog of this gangster who had split, and they did not like what the gangster had done with the dogs. And the fact that I buried the three dogs and took care of Frank the way I did, the other gangster guys who had their killer dogs basically stopped doing that, stopped having the gambling and the killing of other dogs. They stopped it. And they got me to get, they each had 3 or 4 dogs, killer dogs, and they would keep the one that they were most attached to, and then I got the other ones a house, and they lived in with us and Frank, and I got them quasi deprogrammed so they weren't so nuts about killing, and that's what we have to do with the social structure. That's what we have to do with the Luciferian world that's around us. That's what we have to do with, the hidden hand, the powers that shouldn't be, and the sock puppets, right? We can't fight them physically, can't do it. Can't have a civil war. And we'll be taking, we will be playing straight into the hands. Yeah. And pits are, all dogs are big babies. And the only reason they're semi-violent is because they're traumatized, and that's how those dogs were, So, and so this is how we have to deal with our challenge, right? As the cadre, as the chorus, as the shock troops of love's co-creation, right? And we have to bring love, understanding, you know, and loads of entertainment where people will be enlightened by it, not distracted by it. I used to have this nickname of the Minister of Fun until one day I was looking at my lexicon and I saw the Sumerian, the Minister of Fun. What is minister? Is a person who controls the dogma of hate. And what is fun? It is the ultimate distraction of hate's hate. So I said, ooh, I got to find a new branding. That's why I became, Sensei Albab, the griot, Because those are righteous titles. So our entertainment is there to enlighten, to bring people forward, to have them step up, to ascend to their consciousness of free will, so they can make the choice to be in service to love's co-creation. So, yep. Hard to say goodbye to our pups, no kidding. And I've said a lot because I'm a dog boy. I'm just like I pick people up who need assistance, and I've had dogs my whole life. This is, since I became homeless, it's hard for me to have a dog because I can't take care of myself. I'm not going to take a dog. Now, I'm friends to many dogs. I'm always there to assist a dog, to free a dog. I mean, I don't know, 2 years ago, I guess it was, I came upon a similar situation. And, some guy had these dogs all locked up and was basically tormenting them. And I could see that he was using them to fight because there are certain things that you have that you train a dog to fight. So I went onto the property, and the dog, right? And I went to each cage and again, took my hand and put this up to the cage. And they went, oh. And so one by one, once they quieted down and were like, oh, I opened their cage and took them out. And they kind of was like, first off, I opened up the door to each cage and they wouldn't get out. And I said, fine, fine, take your time. And when I opened the gate and the first one just bolted out of there, they said, we can go too. Oh, wing! They shot out of there and just ran down the street, just ran away. And was some fence around this whole property. And these dogs ran at a really good gait once they got out of their cage and flew over that fence. It was like Free Willy, it was like, and they did not, they made it by a foot over that fence and just kept going. And so, I looked around, there were no more dogs to set free, and I walked out and I was heading the way I went, and within, I don't know, 5-6 blocks, those dogs, circled around and found me, right? And this is, again, by this time, I'm a homeless guy. I have no place to live. So they're like, we're with you, buddy. Whatever it takes, we're with you. So I said, okay. So, I went over to, and, I had my car. And so I got them all in my car, and I started driving them around. And I went to different places that I knew, and people saw, like, 5 killer dogs in my car, like, not barking, not screaming, not, going nuts. And I took them to different people I knew. And so, you want a dog? I said, well, those are scary dogs. I said, yeah, they're killer dogs. But I kind of broke them of that. I think if they like you, they'll be the best dog you ever had. And so, took me all day, but I found a home for all of those dogs, and they're still around. That was only 2 years ago, and they were pretty young. Because killer, fighting dogs don't last too long. And so, anyway, so every time I go visit they are like, oh, it's Al. I'm a dog, I'm a dog boy. I'm not a dog whisperer, I'm a dog boy. I'm part dog. Now, I can get along with cats. I can get along with any animal, I have that animal thing in me. So I can get along with any animal. And when I was a little kid, I used to go to the zoo in Central Park. And my grandma and I would go into all of the different, they had the monkey house, the snake house, the lion, the bear. And I would go and where that animal could get nose to nose with me. Usually there was a plexiglass or something. And, I would just sit there cross-legged in front of the thing. And the animals would just kind of walk up to that glass and look at me. I would look at them, they would look at me. I'd smile, and we'd do that until my grandma would say, come on, let's go. And I'd get up and I'd wave to them, and they kind of look at, and then, and after years of doing that with my grandma, from about 3 until about 6, I got to know all of the animal keepers and everyone in that zoo. And we talked about animal communications, and there were about 6 people of the 30 people who worked there who were like that, had this animal connection, that they could do the same thing. And they told me about it and how to enhance it and how to, you know, what every animal wants. They all have different psychologies. And so I kind of learned that. And from that, when I studied psychology on humans, it wasn't that hard to take what I'd learned as a child with animals and then use it with human beings, because human beings are actually stupider than any animal I know. We are the total morons of the clan. Anyway, and that's why we're stuck in this illusion world of materialism. All the other animals aren't. They're already in love's co-creation. Now they can be driven mad when mistreated, but they're not as stupid as we are. They're not as deluded as we are, and they've chosen to be in love's co-creation, where we don't have a clue, as a species anyway. So individually, we have our moments, but as a species, so, I'm just amazed we're still friggin' here. Oh, don't worry about it, FT. And what we have to do is, in our life, we don't skate from these moments. We step up to them, and that's what makes us stronger. That's what makes us able to help others, right? So FT, if you have to leave, that's not a problem. Oh, where that fear and emotion, because why you had to leave is because that emotion that you were feeling, you were experiencing the same kind of trauma that these animals were having. Well, you will find that pretty much all of my, like last night, we almost went 4 hours, So right now, we're moving towards 2 hours. And if you stick through all the sad moment, deeper and profound moment of you have to realize. So you will, tutoring you as your um, I'm tutoring you social cultural forensic anthropology with the dynamic footstep of alchemy. So there is a textbook for this. How about now? And the interesting thing, how am I doing? I don't see anything buffering, but you tell me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? How about now? Can you hear me now? Well, let's see. Buffering hard on my end. Was great combo. Oh, okay. Take care. Yes. Yes, what? Yes, it's buffering hard on your end, or yes, you can hear me. Because if you can hear me, I'll keep going. If not, I will say goodnight. Yep, can see you now. Okay. So anyway, so what I have to offer is not any textbook, right? What I have to offer is a window of opportunity for you to be all you can be without losing the army says, oh, join the army, we'll make you all you can be. Well, they scrub every ounce of who you are and turn you into a killing machine. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to offer love's co-creation, which will give you the ability, opportunity, and experience to ascend to your conscious free will. And then you can serve all our relations, bringing love's co-creation to everyone and everything, and thus popping the bubble of the illusion of Luciferian, you know, the illusion of materialism. Now, none of this is bad or good. I don't believe in bad or good. It's just what it is. And it'll take however long it takes. And I'm here because I'm, being given the opportunity to serve you, my adepts, my cadre, my chorus, my shock troops of co-creation. When I say mine, I'm just your sensei. I'm not anything. I'm just your humble sensei, Al Bob, in service to love's co-creation. Anyway, so what's interesting, it's obvious. So I'm going to spend the last 10 or 15 minutes talking about this. And that is obviously, the hidden hand slash powers that shouldn't be sock puppets have become quite aware of this, right? Because for all of the thumbs up you guys give me, I have twice as many, if not 4 times as many, thumbs down. And I can tell who is watching and how many are. And if all of you guys are giving me thumbs up, then the 20 or so thumbs down for every 10 that I get up means that it's not a human being. It's a bot. And the trolls that came and visited us kind of left because instead of us reacting in a negative way, we went to it with love and openness and said, "Hey, stick around, not a problem. We're ready." But you do have to, when everyone in the cadre, if you go somewhere with something, you got to give a good explanation. You got to be on the 411, right? And that those creatures couldn't do that. And so our honesty and our open love basically chased them away. But the thumbs down, that's an easy, Android, easy algorithm, easy thing to do, right? It's, can't we, so what I want to do is have this experiment of even knocking that down, right? You know, you know, because it's pretty obvious that those thumbs down are, artificially inseminated, whereas the thumbs up aren't. They're really what people are feeling and thinking and wanting to share, right? So let's, through prayer and through, going into space and to state and going into our lodge and our Akashic record, let's start looking at all this stuff. And this is the first good step of training ourselves as the cadre, as the chorus, as the shock troops of love's co-creation, to ameliorate this negative energy, this fear, this self-loathing of humanity that is trying to push us on the precipice of extinction, right? And so this is how we're going to do it. Everyone is in their own way, and every day and every way, in their own way, going to take the love of the peace of the earth and make it stronger through love's co-creation in everything we do, right? And by doing this, we will bring, again, like one of the cadres said, we are the a vibrational love to all our relations, right? So that's where we're going to start working on this. Each of us in our own way, right? I'm doing it on my side of the shamanic veil. So that flashing is happening. Okay. And that again, whatever technical thing is happening, it's happening because someone is interfering on this side to try and I'm sure that that flash, I see it, very subtly on my end. That flash is a certain harmonic to try to distract and disorient the cadre, right? So all I can say is this is a great opportunity for us to use this as a simulator, just like we did with the trolls. We used it as a simulator to, ameliorate the issue, right? And the more is what the Jedi does. These aren't the droids you're looking for, And this is great that we have this opportunity to use this vehicle as a test bed, a training simulator, right? because it's hard to train in this discipline when you don't have a backstop, unless when you guys come to the deep green and we sit around the fire and we make sweat lodge and we do a whole bunch of ceremony. That's a different, but this is a ceremony we're doing on a digital platform. I don't think anyone has done this before. I haven't seen it. There are a lot of, everything under the sun is on the YouTube. And I've gone and looked at a lot of people talking about shamanic ceremony and this and that and meditation and da 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 da. And they're basically advertisements for a class. And they will give a little interlude of, so you can get a taste of whatever they want to sell you. And that's okay, but it's basically like back in the day when we were flower children and Nixon turned us into hippies. And you know what hippie is? Somebody shoots heroin in their hip. And then Agnew called it a dirty hippie. That's somebody shoots heroin in their hip so much that they're in the gutter all the time. Let's see, Lisa C. My Jedi name is Clear Rats, or Clear Star. And my force be with us. Yep. May. Yep, May. Yep. So it's easier for me. I just have to talk. You guys have to use your thumbs. And I knew what you were saying. But it's always good to be specific. So, we're heading towards 2 hours. So at 2 hours, 2 minutes and 22 seconds, I think I'm going to. Okay, you were breaking up a little. How about now? Am I better? Let's see. Let's put this on something. How about that? Is that better? Is that good? This is a big, gigantic. The school is a basic stone concrete castle. Let's see. Line 2. How about now? Anyway, the Wi-Fi is all the way downstairs. But it's really strange? I can be standing underneath the Wi-Fi, and you guys say I'm buffering and breaking up. And how about now? So, again, this is a training tool. Yep, what? Yep, I'm okay. Yep, I'm not. Yep, mine too. Anyway. So it's, look at that. I've been talking for what I felt like was 3 minutes and only 42 seconds went by. That's what I'm talking about. There's all of this interesting in here, kids. You're not breaking in Scotland. Okay, so, where I really want to get to is where I am with my masters. I don't need, in that movie, we don't need no stinking badges, With my masters, I don't need no stinking Wi-Fi or the internet or my cell phone. I just go into state and I can communicate on every plane of existence with my masters, And that's why I placed Akasha K in all of your lodge's garden in the corner there. His Hambu, or its Hambu. Master Akasha K really has no gender or species. Anyway, I've seen it as so many different things. Anyway, so we're heading there, 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 47 seconds. At 2222, I'm going to say goodnight. And so I want everyone to, you can go back and look at these things. I would love it if everybody went and downloaded this on your hard drive or on a thumb drive or on a CD-ROM or whatever, and picked out the ones that are really meaningful to you. And if I'm going to have to figure out how to put these. Can you guys just, my playlist, or the toad is tripping me out. Peering into your soul. Good. Good, good, good. That's a good thing, you know? Meaning you guys should really, I mean, this is, you're having some serious awakenings, and most people can't. The energetics is so intense. The cell phone signal, the microwave, the chemtrails, the harp, the stuff they're doing in this, out there in space to us. I mean, this is some severe, Luciferian, um, you know, dark magic that's occurring. And I think, let's see, today is Thursday. So I want you guys to figure out what journey you want to go on. Maybe back to Lucifer's office building, or maybe to the land of the eight kings of magic, or maybe to the school of, the mystic school. I mean, there are a lot of places that we can go. You can be very protected and safe, and you can bring your guides, especially your lodge guide, or we can go through, Master Akasha K's Hambu. What you kind of figure out where you want to go the next few nights, and we'll go there, right? Toad Alley. Okay, we can go there. I know just the place. So, okay, here we are. 2, 2, 10, 11. So at 2222, I'm saying good night. And I love you all. Good night. Good 19, 20, 21, 22. See you tomorrow in the AM and in the PM. Okay, that'll be the 1st of February.